The biggest problem we must solve is global warming, unless we want the parking garages of Miami to be filled with seawater. Global warming brings three great dangers to the world. Homes on any low-lying seacoast will become flooded at high tide. More floods will occur during hurricanes and thunderstorms, and windstorms will increase in number, wind speed, and duration. We can predict that the value of land and houses in low-lying seacoast areas and in regions affected by windstorms, tornadoes, and hurricanes will decline in value, and the flood insurance, if it is available at all, will increase in cost. The people who create global warming by pouring carbon dioxide into the air have routinely paid scientists to dispute the accuracy of projections of a warmer climate. I once worked with the oil industry of the United States, and I have some experience with refineries and tank farms where crude oil and refined products are processed and shipped. I have seen documents dating as early as 1954 which prove that normal middle managers in the oil industry knew that the processes and functions normally carried out on oil refineries always resulted in contamination of soil and groundwater, sometimes creating plumes of contaminated groundwater from miles downstream of the refinery, and this water was always considered poison. Scientists of the industry certainly knew the same things any refinery section manager knew, but when the cancers of Love Canal became associated with gasoline, the scientists who worked for the oil companies launched a massive outpouring of poo-poo journalism intended to prove that drinking and breathing gasoline could not possibly make a healthy human being sick. The same scientists, paid six-digit salaries, questioned the effectiveness of pumping and aerating groundwater to remove gasoline. They announced in some articles that the gasoline could never be removed at a reasonable cost, and in other articles that the gasoline could be removed, but the price of gasoline at the pump would go to $5 a gallon by 1982. Beginning with Love Canal in 1970 and intensifying with the establishment of ERA and the Clean Water Act in 1972, oil industry propagandists cried the blues and threatened a terrifying economic collapse. They spurned chemists and engineers who offered them simple pumping systems to clean up their refinery soil and groundwater. They called them alchemists. They said they were trying to turn crap into gold. The end result of this poop storm of propaganda was the befuddlement of the American politician and a delay of 17 years in the implementation of environmental protection laws, which could have caused the oil companies to spend some money. But even then, rather than spend the money to clean up their refineries, they used the 17 years to reorganize and make their refineries into separate corporations, free of all legal ties to the oil company which spawned them. As separate corporations, they acted only as customer and source to the parent, buying crude oil and selling refined products for the primary company. When, in 1987, environmental laws finally required the oil companies to clean up their refineries, they didn't own any dirty refineries. All the refineries were self-contained operations, they had their own corporations, and they could prove it in a bankruptcy court by displaying a bill of sale. Typical first paragraph of this bill of sale reads something like this: "For a fee of $5,000 and good and valuable consideration, Splat Oil Company sells to Fly-by-Night Refining one oil refinery, slightly used as is." This document makes it possible for Fly-by-Night Refining to go bankrupt and abandon the refinery, and Splat Oil, which built and operated that refinery from 1922 to 1986, has no legal responsibility for cleaning up the contaminated soil and groundwater. All your politicians, Republicans and Democrats, twiddled their thumbs and did nothing. During the 1980s, more than 100 refineries went into bankruptcy and were abandoned in place. The companies which had recently purchased these refineries stated they had no choice but to go out of business. Since the corporate officers of these shell companies were protected by the corporate shield, no person or corporation was ever held responsible. And because a Republican was president, the federal EPA did not dispute these manipulations of the bankruptcy code. So the splat oils of the country escaped all financial responsibility for the brownfields they had created. We can learn from this. Corporations will produce a false propaganda and engage in manipulations of government and the law to escape any increase in cost or responsibility which might reduce their profits. So if we try to legislate against global warming, we will experience delay, propaganda, and legal manipulations as the wealthiest people in the country weasel out of their obligation to correct the problems they created in the course of becoming billionaires. If we want to end global warming, we must go over the head of national government. The great fear of all wealthy people is losing market, losing economic advantage in a world market. The world needs a private enterprise company, a non-profit organization which can monitor the combustion, afforestation, and biodegradation processes of the nations of the world. Let us name this company with a name which describes its primary goal, the Global Carbon Sequestration Agency, or GCSA.com. The goal is to reduce the addition of carbon to the atmosphere, tie up carbon in solid form, remove carbon from the atmosphere, or all of the above, using existing technology or new technologies as they are invented. The simplest way is to plant more trees to protect forests from burning, and industry should process large combustion outputs through efficient scrubbers which capture and condense CO2 for industrial use. So, the goals of atmospheric CO2 reduction can be achieved through low-tech or high-tech processes. Rich and poor nations can all make a contribution, and all nations, including governments, which allow only one political party to exist, or which allow and encourage bribery of their ministers and officials, or which allow a president to underfund or order the non-performance of the Environmental Protection Authority. All nations should be monitored by this independent authority, and all nations should be punished for failure to meet targets by reducing the profitability of their trade. Any nation which does not present and operate effectively a program to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere will be documented on an international website. Any national government hoping to reduce global warming may consider all trade agreements with this nation to be null and void. All nations may then charge a suitable import tariff on the uncooperative nation's products to raise the price of products and services sold from that uncooperative rogue nation. Suddenly, every industrialist in the world will have a reason to plant 1 million trees and install a CO2 reduction technology in his smokestack. My name is Quixote. I bring you solutions.